Hi, everyone. This is Kara with Ernest SB Publishing. This video will be on about yesterday, where I processed complicated grief and stayed as present as possible even when flashbacks came up. So if you struggle with triggers and you need to take a break from this, feel free to. No pressure. I just need to share my story as a way of getting into more self-expression. So here goes. I still have a little bit of anxiety, and that's to be expected because of my past and the way I still handle things. I hope that this video is relatable, not too dark, even though it's about deep, dark topics. I also hope that you gain something from it, whether it's self-awareness or if learning something new from me or from what I learned. Just whatever. I just hope it has value. Yesterday marked 17 years since my father passed away. Daddy was a really good person. And there are a lot of things that I don't remember because I have dissociative issues. I've been diagnosed with CPTSD, DPDR, and more. And by talking through my therapist, I've discovered there's a likelihood that I also have dissociative identity disorder, but I'm not completely sure about that. Not something I really want to have, but it's something that I've dealt with. It's something that I didn't really discover about myself until the past year or so. And usually got confused when people called me different names or when somebody that I didn't know recognized me. So yesterday I was just focusing on figuring out what I could do to kind of turn it into a rebirth day instead of a death day. And it kind of hit me that the 17-year mark. 17 was the age that I had turned when Daddy stopped driving a truck for a year. He was usually gone out of each month. Usually he would be home a few days at a time. Sometimes he would spend longer at home if he could. He made sure he was home for holidays, and I believe he got home for most birthdays, if not all of them, though the memories are still whispers, if that makes sense, like kind of a ghost of a memory. So I can't recall exactly what happened during those years. But Daddy was the person in my family that I felt the most connected with. Daddy was the person that I could be myself around. I could ask questions, even about the Bible, without being called a blasphemer. Daddy taught me as much as he could to stand up for myself. He had me stand outside the bathroom if he was at a truck stop and I was alone with him, and made sure that I told anybody that came up, whether male or female, Daddy's in the bathroom, and if you try to touch me, he will kick your butt. So, that kind of thing. But I didn't have that awareness away from him because of the way my life went outside of that. In my family, I tended to be back and forth between invisible child and scapegoat. Sometimes outside of the house, people might have seen me as like a golden child, because when I did things that my mom wanted me to do, like singing the songs she wanted me to sing, I love singing, but I didn't always love the songs. She would praise me, but then we'd come home, and when practicing, I didn't feel like I mattered. I didn't feel like what I wanted mattered. It was be what others want me to be, but not myself. So yesterday, I woke up, or I say wake up, but I got out of bed because I had sleep issues the night before. I was in bed most of the night, but I tossed and turned, woke up several times each hour. And when I went upstairs, I just laid on the floor and meditated. We have cushions, and the cushions were sliding apart on the floor, on the tile, and my butt just kind of fell in onto the tile. I let it sit there, and the cold kind of relaxed my muscles a little bit, helping with the fibromyalgia flare-up that I have. I rolled on my side, got each of my IT bands, and that was the start of just doing something that would help me. Because when I'm at peace with myself, I'm less absorbing of negativity and less projecting. So my husband got up a little bit later, and we both had sleep issues. So we decided not to go for a walk yesterday, mostly because by the time we were both awake, we were both tired, and it was starting to get hot. So we just kind of hung out. I journaled before he got up. I forgot about that. I journaled to Daddy, which is, I started out Dear Daddy, and connect with him, but also connect with myself and whatever other parts of me come out, which I'm still learning about. So I felt better, and it was really good because we got to watch Barry, the most recent episode of Barry, which, that's such a good show. So watching that, I felt a little bit, closer. And a little bit later, my husband got a text from a friend asking if he could get a ride to Walmart. And though it was unexpected, and we had planned to just kind of spend the day together, so I could feel less lonely and less non-existent, because after my daddy died, I tended to feel non-existent for a little while, and it comes back. Basically, like, when he died, I died, and that's a part of me that's just really difficult to handle, because it's a very weak and victimized state to be in. And I don't feel proud of being a victim. I feel proud of being a survivor, and I feel proud that I'm pushing myself into thriving. It's no longer just stagnation, and it's no longer complete people pleasing. When I do something helpful, it's from an authentic point. And that's why I've been focused so much on just learning more about myself, is so it's not that desperation that comes out. So I encouraged my husband to go see his friend. Didn't know how long it was going to be, didn't even really worry about it. It's like, okay, well, it's gone. I can just do other things. I started reading again. I have a couple of memoir books that I'm reading. One is Uncultured, which I just got yesterday. And then the other one is What My Bones Know. And I'm in part 3 of that book. Both very relatable in their stories, in a way. Not the exact same situations happening, but they're relatable. While he was gone, I also just spontaneously decided to start socializing a little bit. I'm an introvert, and sometimes I take that completely into isolation, and then I get this feeling like I'm neglecting the people I care about. It takes a lot of energy to connect with the people I care about, because I care about like everybody, basically. Even people that I can't stand, there's still a part of me that cares about the people themselves, even if I don't like the behaviors of the people and don't want to be around them. So I made a new connection. I commented on a couple of posts on igotOut.org on Instagram, and learned there's another woman that's had a relatable story to what I shared on there. So we started talking, and even though it's a new connection, I didn't feel completely absorbed into it like I used to. That people pleasing part of me, and like the part that didn't want to be the scapegoat. Like, I'd rather be really kind than even be considered evil sometimes. So I would go overboard into just kind of a fawn response, like the complete isolation is freeze response, and then I come out of that and go into fawning. Very few times do I actually fight when I'm having PTSD issues. So, freeze and fawn, then feel bad about myself, fight against myself. That's basically how it goes. While I was doing that, I got a message from my husband asking if his friend could come over, and which I had told him before he left. It's like, I'd love to meet your friend sometime. And so I was excited to meet his friend, and super fucking nervous. My heart started racing. I could tell it was both excitement and anxiety. Excitement because I'm doing something new, and excitement because, my husband and I have a healthier relationship than we used to. It's taken years to get to this point because we each had patterns from our previous relationships. But it's comforting to know, he trusts his friends. He's getting out when I've been wanting him to get out for a while. So that felt good to me. It felt good to me that we felt comfortable enough with the house's cleanliness to even invite somebody over. And I decided to use some of the anxiety to sing and clean a little bit more, because we had dirt on the floor where we'd been gardening, and track sewing, and dog hair, because dog and cat hair, because animals, they shed. And then when I started singing, I felt that like nervousness that I had when I was practicing singing at home, like growing up. I started singing when I was 5. Sang my first solo in church at, I think, 8. That's the age that I associate it with, so I think that's what I've said before. And I always had so much anxiety. I would grip onto the microphone like this, and then sit there twirling the cord around my finger. My voice would shake. It would start to close up a little bit, because when I'm stressed, there's almost like I don't know if it's actually this, but it seems like a vocal cord dysregulation. So I sang, and it was so like tight and shaky that at first I was like, I don't even sound like myself. I don't like the way I sound, but I kept going. I kept doing what I felt like doing because like I love singing. It it's great breath work. It's a great way to relieve the tension, from basically chest up. And the fact that his friend is a male, and in my previous marriage, I was trafficked behind closed doors. There's this fear that like came up, even though I know there's a night and day difference between my ex and my husband. But I was in that relationship for 13 years. Before that, I've been sexually assaulted since before I was 1. Not usually outside of the home, but pretty much in my memory, Daddy was the only one that I trusted not to molest me. So I connected to that part of me that feels safe because of what Daddy taught me. And I also I offered to make lasagna because I hadn't made that in a while. Excuse me. I hadn't made that in a while, and it's something that I love making for holidays or special occasions like birthdays or anniversaries. I hadn't made it in months. I was dissociative as fuck, close to blacking out, and that's another reason I was singing, is because if I didn't get that energy out, I would have blacked out pretty much as soon as my husband got home with his friend, based on history and based on how much I know myself now, know my patterns, know my symptoms, and how it feels when I feel unsafe. So I ordered this stuff to make lasagna because, of course, I didn't have the stuff. I didn't make this plan before, so I didn't have the ingredients. They got home, and we started just talking. I have to distract myself a lot to even handle socializing with males, and I haven't socialized with males at an extreme level in years, except for with my husband. And so it's really hard for me to have trust in general, because there's a part of me that still doesn't completely trust myself and not to black out and become the people-pleasing version of me that just goes into lack of recognition of my own needs. So I just took my time. Well, take my time is in I remained present. I body scanned while conversing, so there was a little bit of split focus, but that's another reason why there's likelihood that I do have dissociative identity disorder, because I can focus on a conversation while body scanning, even though it's not an intentional even though it's not an intentional, what's the word I'm looking for? forgot. Forgot word. Uh, I don't intentionally try to do two things at once all the time. But when anxious, it's important for me to body scan to make sure, you know, if I feel a certain symptom in my body, for example, like when we started talking about really deep topics like religion, sex, and war, and the first time meeting with a male, it was like, whoa, that hit me really hard. But at the same time, I'm a deep person. I love deep topics, and I hate shallow talk. Like, I hate shallow things most of the time. I small talk is just bleh. It's like you can't get to the heart of a person by talking about like cars all the time. And get interests, but a car is not a person. A car is not an emotional part of a person. It's not like it's outside. It's materialistic instead of psychological. So I had trouble handling this conversation, but I didn't split it against myself completely. I didn't completely distrust his friend. You know, I had my walls up. When the food got delivered, I accidentally knocked one of the bags off, and the sauce exploded everywhere. Got glass and like tomato sauce everywhere. Had to keep the dogs out. My husband helped me clean up the mess, and I was getting that. Oh no, I fucked up again. I fucked up. And my husband said, just like, it's only sauce on the tiles, like water under the bridge. And that's so endearing. It helped me. My husband ordered another thing of sauce, so we had a delay, but we started watching The Jackal. And then I got this memory, like these flashbacks. I call it a flashback train because it's like one right after another at different times in my life, because different aspects of me coped in ways where I forgot about what happened to me and replaced it with either false memories or nothingness. Like, I don't exist anymore because what I want doesn't matter, so why exist? So it helped me to recognize that. Like this movie that we watched, I had watched when it came out, like shortly after it came out. And though I'm not completely sure, I have this feeling that it was the same movie that my older brother and I watched the night his friend, who he met in the army and brought back to visit for some reason, I don't know why, raped me at 13 or 14 years old. So the fears just got amplified. But I started cooking. Getting into, just kitchen witchery is what I call it. And also, it's like I was pushed to be the greatest hostess as a child. Like, that kind of bullshit. And I got joy out of it yesterday because it's a wonderful thing to be able to be creative with food and be creative with song and be creative with writing and everything. Because just like I'm tangential when I talk, I'm tangential in my mind. I put things together in weird orders. Forgot the cheese on one layer, so I put extra cheese on another layer. And the first time I've ever done that, the noodles were too short. So the bottom two layers didn't have like the noodle all the way across, but then the top one I made 10 lasagna noodles. So the top one had like one noodle that I went across the pan and I tucked inside like I was doing hospital quarters. And yes, I'm a snorter, like a piggy. But I focused on staying connected to the conversation as much as I could while also honoring my energy needs, because as an introvert who isolates most of the time, last night was a lot, especially on a stressful day where I'm usually having complicated grief, or I do have complicated grief. On a stressful day where I haven't slept well in a couple of days and just exhausted but not sleepy. I shared a little bit about my history while he was there because the topics we were talking about triggered me. And I realized, like, most people who have a history like his, I might not trust. So it also helped me, like, process that, like, there are multiple reasons why people do things that seem toxic even if they're not. And so it's important to get to the heart of the matter instead of going to automatic judgments. I noticed when we were having a conversation, he would get really intense eye contact. Or if he was standing above me, or like standing up while I was sitting down and he had that intense eye contact, I felt the shield go higher. I spent a lot of time, sitting in front of my husband. He was in his recliner, and I sat on a cushion in front of him, and I like draping his feet over me like I was in a roller coaster. And I massaged his feet while he massaged my shoulders, and we just bonded. We spent time just in the zone. I talked more than my husband, but I think that's partly because he had the few hours with his friend earlier, and I was just meeting his friend, so getting to know him, of course there's going to be more talking than what's usual. And I asked his friend if he was a reader, if he liked fantasies. So we started talking about books, and I learned about a couple of books that I want to read. One of them is in Russian. I can't remember the name of it, but if he finds a translation, he's gonna send it to my husband so I can read it. And I gave one of my spare books to him, and explained that a little bit about my history. I told him that I had been trafficked, for 13 years, and for most of my life before that, I had been groomed into that kind of life. And that conversation stemmed from a conversation about sexual laws in the Bible. Law. I don't believe the Bible verbatim. I'm agnostic, but I was raised in Pentecostal church, so there's a lot of trauma responses that come from religious abuse that relate to sexual abuse, that relate to just everything kind of like morphs into this giant blob of trauma for me. And so it comes out in just here's part of me that is this way, here's part of me that's this way, and it's like multiplicity. I loved the movie Multiplicity when I was younger, and I didn't know then why I had this like strong compulsion to watch the movie over and over. But it's because I have that. There's compartmented parts of me that I needed to access. Last night's conversation was amazing and extremely difficult for me to handle. So I just got to spend my time processing. I thanked him a little bit later for the conversation, and he pointed out to me that I come off as a little cold. He told me he understood it was probably a PTSD response, but it reminded him of people in his life that sound narcissistic. And so I started gaslighting myself a little bit, even though I'm extremely warm-hearted. I have this like dissociative wall. As an INFPT or a mediator with turbulent emotions, I maintain my military bearing in order not to confuse others. Because if I show every emotion that I have, there's going to be, it's going to be chaotic because there's chaos inside of me. I went to bed early. Well, not early, but before he left. So during that time, like as soon as I laid down, the emotional, like there's like a dam breaking. And I got close to panic. I had all these negative thoughts, like I'm an imposter. Like I did something bad. Like even though my walls were up and I was friendly, but not, I the only touch was shaking his hand when he got there. And I made eye contact when I could. But there was a part of me that like started blaming myself for things that didn't even happen, because for decades I blamed myself for everything that happened, for every look that anybody gave me, especially sexual. I blamed myself. In every social situation where I had to talk to a male, part of the anxiety comes from not wanting to pull somebody into sexually assaulting me. Oh, that thought process infuriates me. There's no reason why at 5 years old a girl needs to start feeling that way about herself. And there's no reason why I need to feel like that about myself now. I can talk about sex. I can talk about religion. I can talk about war. I can talk about whatever the fuck I want to talk about in a way that engages conversation and doesn't push people away without feeling like I'm doing something wrong. I don't have to feel comfortable in the small space that the people that I grew up around, except for my dad, kept me in. Last night I slept a lot better. I woke up today feeling more inspired. My husband and I went for a walk. I got an idea to do this video. I'm going to write a memoir about like the topics that we discussed last night. Just about the flashbacks, about what went on, and also take notes of the individual situations from my past that came up so that I can write memoirs about them when I have the time and energy for it. I don't feel wrong for wanting to share my story. I feel like one of those women that I admired for most of my life that were able to share what bothers them and what they've learned from it. Almost like the ideal version of me is that powerful person that, cares about people so immensely that they care about themselves that much. Roshan Ra, which, the scarring of the Roshan Ra, comes from the Persian Dari word for light, which is Roshan. And Ra is one of the littles in me. Ra was the word my younger brother used before he could say Kara. And in a way, Roshan Ra is lighting up the sun in me so I can actually bring out my own light. And even though yesterday was a death anniversary, it was a rebirth day for me. I didn't get my self-publishing done by the date because of, just all the emotions coming up. I still have 9 8/9 chapter, or 10 8/9 chapters left to edit before my rebranding. But I'm rebranding myself in the process. So healing is my first priority. Sharing my healing in multiple creative lights is part of my purpose, because self-expression is something I didn't do when I was younger. And self-expression to myself and others is what brings out more of the purpose in my life. It's what brings out more of the joy, and that's where I feel the most fulfilled. Connecting with others in a way that's real. In a way that just allows me to see myself as a human and not this demon or a ghost, or for, without trying to be toxic to myself or others, a whore. Because women, I used to think, if women are bitch, slut, or whore, or, bitch or slut, I'd rather be a slut than a bitch. That's how I looked at it. And part of it is because that's how I was groomed. Assertiveness comes off as bitchy, and I came off as cold last night, but I'm not cold. I'm naturally cold because I'm, from Tennessee and living in Minnesota. plus, depression and, just moods, hormones, everything just brings out that coldness in me. But my heart is full, and uh, uh it's weird to say that because there's still a little bit of a wall in my heart. But each time that I get in touch with myself and share and learn more about other people, that wall comes down a little bit more. I hope that this conversation has inspired you in some way, connected with you, and that you take some time to just process your emotions. Don't feel like you need to do anything. If you like this, like it. If you want to, subscribe. If you feel like it, share. If you feel like it, comment on how this video affected you. What you learned about yourself, what you learned about me, or, if you have anything you want to share about what helps you when you're dealing with complicated grief. Engage. But if you feel like you need to kind of distance yourself before engaging, do that too. Thanks for listening to my tangent.